I've clicked it.
Meeting is streaming live now on Facebook.
Yes,
Lovely.
it is indeed. Hello, Facebook again.
Hello, world.
Yeah, hello, the internet.
We're live.
Yeah. We're here with my Ethan's good friend Darren. How have you been, Darren?
Good, man. Well, as good as you can be on a lockdown, I guess. Like,
I was gonna say, I'm sick of asking people like that. Oh, how's lockdown been with you? Because it's been shit for everyone. So
it's just the worst conversations. Just
I've kind
same
of
stories.
It, but also,
did you say you kind of enjoyed it?
Well, I've enjoyed like financially, I'm in a better position somehow because obviously. I mean, furlough is 80% of my wage, but I must have been spending more than 20% of my wage on going out. So,
oh man,
my bank balance is pretty healthy at the moment, which is nice.
Yeah,
it's been good for me.
I picked a shit time to go back to, gigging and teaching full time. So, I do not have that lovely furlough cushion that we've heard so much about.
Oh man, it's been good.
Yeah, let's get started then. So first of all, thanks again for using up some of your Friday evening, or the first part of your Friday evening for us, I should say, because you're doing some after this, which we'll get into a little later on.
Thank you for having me, of course.
It's a pleasure.
It's nice to have something to do.
Yeah, it is.
Apart from Ethan seems to be fine with it, so
yeah.
Oh yeah.
So if you're just getting stuck in, so the one question, I mean, I don't think I've ever actually asked you this question, but how come you? So everyone knows that you're a fantastic banjo player, and that's basically your full-time job is based around the banjo. But why did you decide to pick up the banjo in the first place to make it your your primary instrument, really?
Oh, yeah, that's fair. Well, to be honest, without sounding too silly, I didn't really choose to play the banjo. I was given a banjo, so I guess you could say the banjo chose me. Yeah.
Have you got that tattooed somewhere?
And there we are. There. Interview over. No, but genuinely, so I as a kid, I was taking classical guitar lessons, and I was taking kind of bluesy guitar lessons, and I had a great teacher who could kind of ride that fine line of teaching me fingerstyle guitar and teaching me how that could be more than just a classical thing. And my grandmother really enjoyed hearing me play, and she used to yell at me for playing with a pick, plectrum, whatever. So as kind of life went on, when I was 18, I used to go take care of her because she wasn't well. She was staying in I guess a seniors home type situation, care apartment. And her neighbor, the next room over, he had been a professional musician his whole life. And he just had instruments all over the wall. The guy was blind, couldn't see them. So his carer would take the instruments down. So yeah, he said to my grandma, oh, would your grandson like this banjo? I've heard him play and whatever. And then my grandma gave it to me, and she's like, oh, he thinks you play guitar like a banjo player. So she gave it to me, and then she goes, that's your inheritance. So
from someone else. That's amazing.
Yeah. So my first banjo was a 1970 Gibson Mastertone.
Oh wow. Okay.
And
cool. Not bad for a first instrument.
Yeah, it's sitting right there.
Nice.
So then I guess to kind of summarize that, I was given that banjo, and unfortunately my grandma passed away pretty much right after that, so I never actually got to play it for her. But then I went on to college, and I was playing more singer-songwritery. I was into folk music and country music even then. Hadn't really discovered bluegrass, but we'd have a lot of projects where people would need to record, and people were like, oh, Darren's got a banjo. Darren's a banjo player. I wasn't a banjo player, but when somebody says, can you come play on a session, you say yeah. So I definitely did sessions on the banjo before I was ever a banjo player. And then I realized it's oh shit, nobody wants me to play guitar. So
they wanted you to be the banjo player.
Well,
you're more a banjo player than everyone else around you.
Yeah. I was the banjo player because I owned a banjo.
Right.
By default.
Yeah. To this day, it's what's on my business cards.
I mean, it's sorted you out basically for the past, what's that? I don't want to give away your age, for the past few years.
Yeah, well, oh god, well, so would that be 16 years? I mean, I did my first tour as a banjo player at 23, and I toured Canada.
Class.
So
you toured in plenty. How many countries did you mention about that you said you played in?
So I've played the banjo in 17 countries, and you know I
name every single one of them.
Yeah. But you know I don't really care so much about that. But for me, it's a sentimental thing. It's like the only reason I ever counted was because I was thinking how lovely it is that I was given this gift of a physical banjo, but then it sparked something in me, and now like I mean I identify more with the banjo than I think anything else. And when I hear music, when I write music, when I play music, it comes from that banjo side of things. So essentially, I play too fast. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's opened like loads and loads of opportunities up for you, really, especially in the last couple of years, specifically, I suppose, that me and Ethan have been involved in. But even before then, when you were over in Toronto, where obviously you're native from, do you want to go through some of the sort of opportunities it's given you there? I know you've told me in the past, like in the pubs, and really good little anecdotes and stuff. But where did that sort of start? You wanting to play shows? You know, what was the way you got involved?
Well, with that? Yeah. So really, like, I mean, I was finishing college and I got offered this tour. So really, when I went to, and when I say college, I mean North American college. So it was more like I went to university, like I went to get a degree, and I had no desire to be a performer whatsoever. But I got asked to do this tour, and I thought like it'd be a cool thing to do. And I was the opening act, and then I played in the headlining band. So it was like, all right, I'll make some money and I'll get to see some places. And then from that, I moved to Toronto, and it was like, well, now what the fuck do I do? So I did the only thing I knew how to do is I just started offering my services as a musician in bands. So I would teach a few lessons in the day, and then mostly what I would do is live the nightlife in Toronto. So I would play one bar, and say the one bar I'd be playing in a country honky tonk band, and we'd do say the 5 o'clock show, and then I'd go to another bar and I'd play the 8 o'clock show, and it'd be maybe my solo act, which back then was a lot more, I'll say Bob Dylan, Tallest Man on Earth-esque, but
cool,
very energetic, like banging away. And we worked for tips back home, right? So I'd be playing away, and I'd be standing on people's tables and playing banjo solos, and people would put money in the jar, and
in your pants.
Yeah. Oh, you know, man, like anything for a tip. But
that's a life lesson if nothing comes from this conversation.
Yeah. But genuinely, I would play these amazing historic Toronto bars, the Cameron House, the Horseshoe Tavern, all the time. And I was very fortunate to be able to do that. And then when I needed another band to play with, I would just go on Craigslist. I don't know, it's Craigslist big here, but that's what you do. And then from that, I started going, well, if I can do it here, why can't I do it anywhere else? And I started reading articles about North American bands doing really well, touring in Europe, in the UK, and all over the world, really. So I would just sit there, and having no booking experience whatsoever, just started booking my own solo shows. And I think it took me like a year to book my first European tour, but I did 30 shows in like 6.5 weeks in Europe, and I just gigged and gigged and gigged for the money, but also for somewhere to sleep and to see somewhere new. And I would just travel around. I have a guitar in one hand, a banjo in the other, and a bag of clothes on my back.
Nice.
Yeah, so
fair enough. So
pretty daring, actually, I suppose, when you think about it. Were you at the time when you were like quite young then, or starting out? Was it something you just wanted to do, like just to get out there and, you know, whatever happens, I'll just travel around and, you know, I'll just sleep in the sort of thing? Was that?
Yeah, well, I kind of figured like worst case scenario, I get to see somewhere new, and like if I don't make any money on the show, I'll come back being like, oh, I've got a story to tell. You know, I'm sure my parents were fucking terrified. Like, yeah. No, they were definitely terrified. I'm like absolutely terrified. But yeah, it was just one of those. It was like I just wanted to be able to say I did it, you know. And don't get me wrong, I tried messaging labels and agencies, and nobody gave a shit because I hadn't done anything.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, it was kind of that cycle of, well, I've not done anything because nobody's given me a chance. So how am I going to get a chance? Well, fuck it, I'm going to do it myself. So because I had this pretty solid income, albeit small income, of evening gigs, my daytimes were free. So I go to the pub, I go to the coffee shop, anywhere with internet, and just try to book these things. So that's how I did it. And then I came back, and then it was like everyone was really impressed that I did it, and nobody gave a shit that like one day I slept on a park bench, the next day I slept in a stranger's house. One show got canceled and I didn't know, but I had taken a 4-hour train to get there. Nobody cared. Everybody's just like, hey man, you just toured in Europe. You know,
that's cool. Like, yeah.
I mean, I was broke when I came back. You know, I had some cool cigarettes, like, you know, but that was about it. Like, so the first tour was, I think I just barely broke even, but I was happy to do it, and my mom was happy I came home in one piece.
Yeah, that's nice.
Some good stories in the end as well. Well, I mean, that leads on, because obviously you must have played countless shows everywhere, basically. Like I said, some nights you've done 3 in a night. But what would you say is not necessarily your best show? What's your favorite show that you've played, and why?
Right. Okay. I feel like I would have to break it down into almost generations of my music, because I've had some amazing nights playing these regular shows that I would play in Toronto, where the whole night just ends up being an incredible experience. But since living here, absolutely, when I played Focus Wales, so I'd come to play Focus Wales a number of times when I was living in Canada. And then we played a Focus Wales the first time as like my full band, and we got offered Cambridge Folk Festival. And to be honest, I was I thought someone was taking the piss. But my now friend Bev offered this show, and we were just like, what the fuck, man? So we went and we played Focus Wales, and like the Slim Pickens has a bit of a punky edge to it, and I was surprised we got offered it, and I think a lot of people in the crowd were surprised we got offered it. But we showed up, and we had only been a band for a few months. We thought we were playing like a side little stage, and we came out, and it was, I think, 1,200 people is the cap of the tent we played on. And we walked out, and I just then it was a blur. It was an absolute blur.
I've seen some of the photos. There were actually people spilling out the sides of that tent and out towards the back as well.
So it was 1 in, 1 out, because the outdoor space was also fenced in. So the tent held 1,200, and then the outdoor space was blocked by a fence. So our friend who had driven with us, Gareth, couldn't actually get in to take a photo because it was so packed, and it was insane. The next day, because we camped for the night, the next day people were taking photos with us.
That's nice, man.
And it was insane. That was arguably the first Slim Pickens show, and I couldn't believe it. I broke a banjo string in that show and sang an entire song while changing it, and I think that's what drew the people in. They were just impressed.
So Daniel Minty's just said something really nice. He said they're seeing you at Focus Wales in the town square in 2016 is one of the highlights of his life. An introduction to you and your music in my life.
Yeah, doing
That's
the
nice,
town
man.
square gigs. So Focus Wales is near and dear to my heart. I feel like that's just got to be said in this interview. Yeah. Everybody working for Focus Wales and everybody just involved has been so supportive. I met the guys when they were coming to Toronto for the first time in the Roseville band. So Andy and Neil, they were coming over to Toronto for a Canadian Music Week or Indie Week, one of the Canadian festivals. Cool. So I offered them a place to stay, and they had a place to stay, but I ended up booking them a show as like a warm-up gig to the festival. And and we ended up just becoming really good friends. And they were like, "Oh, you've got to come to our festival over in Wales." And I'm like, "Oh, all right, cool, I get sure."
Okay.
Where's that?
But now I've done oh God, like 8 Focus Wales festivals.
Amazing.
You know, I've lived here for, it might actually, this year might be 9.
I feel like you and I must have met before I moved down to Cardiff, because I did Focus Wales, and I think it was 2016 as well. But I remember it was all a bit of a blur for me as well. But that's only because I drank way too many cans of lager over the 4 days I was there for. But I mean, you seem to be like a staple at that festival now. Really, it's like you look for the poster when it comes up, and if it doesn't have your name on it, it's just because they've accidentally forgot to put it on.
Yeah, well, and that's that, and you know, it became that kind of thing because it ended up being a running joke, because when I was like young and in my prime, it was just like I play absolutely everything.
Yeah.
So Focus Wales would be like, right, I got 3 shows this day, 4 shows this day, 5 shows this day, you know, and people started to expect it. And then what ended up happening from that was I started doing this Royal Oak show. And I don't know if you know the Royal Oak in Wrexham. Little shout out to them there. Tiny little pub, best pub. And I would show up there and I would play, and it'd be absolutely heaving. And I would get to do what I did in Toronto. I would play really loud. I'd play really fast. I'd stand on people's tables. I'd drink strangers' pints. I'd just put on this whole weird, angry bluegrass performance, and people would absolutely eat it up. And then I'd come back the next year after, you know, doing my touring, going back to Toronto, and I'd come back and like random people would come up to me being like, "Hey, you're Darren, that dude that drank my pint."
Yeah. I love also that all this is coming from, obviously there must have been a time in your life for the past sort of 15 or so years, because you said that you had no want to be a performer, like there was no part in it that you wanted to be, and now doing that is as performer as it probably gets, you know, like putting on a one-man show is as brave as it gets, in my opinion, at least, like with that.
Yeah, and I genuinely don't know where the switch happened, but I caught the bug. I think just doing that first tour I did was with M. Greiner, who's like a, you know, big Canadian name, and from that she was just so supportive and so lovely, and I learned so much. But then I just enjoyed that feeling, that instant gratification of I do something on stage and people enjoy it. And then from that, like, it just became what I wanted. And I was like, what limits can I push? Like, how far can I go in this live performance? I mean, it's just me and a guitar or a banjo, but like, what can I do to take it beyond that singer-songwriter? Because I used to hate it. I used to get booked for singer-songwriter days or nights or whatever. And it'd be, say, 6 acts, and no offense to anybody that sings sad, slow love songs, but it'd be like 4 acts of sad, slow love songs. This drunk Canadian on a fucking table.
In the way
yeah. And absolutely, I'd just be like bleeding on my guitar, and then never.
And then it would go down again.
Yeah, but you know, and it was just like, well, this is how I'm expressing myself. This is what I want to do. And absolutely, it's had its drawbacks. I think that's why when I released my last EP, I kind of wanted to show that I could write a slow, sad country album. But when it comes to, you put me in front of a crowd, I want to see every single person with a smile on their face. I want to see them shocked and just having the best time. You know, whether I'm with the band, whether I'm with someone else's band, or whatever it is, I just want to have a good time, you know.
So you definitely do that. So obviously we booked you when we did the Phil Collins show, and I don't think we could have put anyone on before them better than you guys for that thing, because it obviously the Phil Collins guys are lovely guys, and we hopefully work with them again in the future. Their thing is they're a party band, and you guys brought the same amount of party that they do, but it's a slightly different level of it. Yours is like more intense, like it's.
And I think a lot of people forget that at the end of the day, it's like, I love writing very sentimental lyrics. I love expressing myself. But on a Friday night at 10 p.m., when everybody's had a drink, I've got a job to do. My job, and I think that comes from all those years of gigging in Toronto. Nobody gives a shit if you're singing that, like, oh, my girlfriend left me and whatever. Like, that's fine, but unless you're gonna get them moving and you're gonna get drinks over the bar, because back home you got paid by the bar percentage. Right. So if the bar made $1,000, you made 10% of that. You were doing all right.
Well, in that case, then don't you want to kind of be really boring while you're on stage, so loads of people go to the bar and buy loads of drinks instead of watching you play? Like, there's a fine line between there somewhere.
Dancers are thirsty, buddy.
They are.
Like the 5 o'clock show. The 5 o'clock show. Anybody that comes to a honky tonk at 5 o'clock in a suit, sing them the slow songs.
They're ready to go.
They'll buy a top shelf whiskey. But no, I think that's the thing. It's like I for the longest time I wasn't very confident in my playing. I wasn't very confident in my musical knowledge or my songwriting. So when people asked what I did, I said I was a performer, and I did that for years, because to me, not that I was faking it, but my job was to perform so the bar made money. And end of. That was it. It didn't matter if I was in Germany, if I was in Denmark, Norway, wherever I was, my job was to make that bar money. So if I had to stand on someone's table and be like, drink on up, and swing my banjo around,
kick their pint over so they buy another one.
Well, you didn't go that far. But it's a great trick when you're like, man on stage is thirsty, and people start giving you drinks. Well,
nice.
Because they don't realize, sorry, I'm giving away all the secrets. They don't realize.
We said before this was going to be educational, so like we're trying to get slip that in there.
Beautiful.
But it's just a very different world, because I don't think that's something that translates necessarily to here very well. Very few...
Well, you're trying and you're doing. I think I personally, like I say, I think you're doing a good job at bringing that over here, because I personally, and Ethan's probably the same, never listened to bluegrass or honky tonk or that sort of stuff, not like actively. But whenever you announce a show, I can't wait to go to it. And that's not even just because you're our friend. It's just we're in that world now. Like, I spent New Year's Eve with you at Bootlegger. Like,
that's it. I feel like every show is a New Year's party for me. When
nice.
But especially like when I'm doing
that's the comment there. That's the tag for the song.
But it's like I've got the originals, I've got the slow songs, but when it comes down to providing a service for an evening, it's providing that, like, we can do 345s and people will be on their feet, and I think that's the big difference. Is like, people often ask me, it's like, well, how do you make money as a band? Like, well, it's like we do all the music, we do all of it all night long, and that's
I suppose,
what you gotta do.
You mentioned before, like with the Cambridge folk thing, you said that the Slim Pickens specifically have got like a punky side to it, which is what me and Ethan are more drawn to when we're putting the type of music on we have. And I listen to a lot of heavy music where you go to shows and people are jumping around and moshing and pushing each other over. It's the same sort of energy that you get at your shows as well, albeit it's a different way of expressing that energy as well. Because I mean, you're just bringing up the album launch show you did upstairs at Club. I can't imagine the amount of like do-si-dos and stuff that was going on that night. Like,
but that's just it. It's like the circle pits are just a little more friendly. But but the thing is, it's like, because so many people say they don't like country music. So many people say they don't know what bluegrass is. It's like, if you can go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, like, you're in, man. Like everybody can tap their feet to that. When I've got a bass line going bump to the bump to the bump to the bump, all of a sudden everybody's like, I love Johnny Cash. You know what I mean? Like, and that's fine if that's what they want to relate that to. But it's a very recognizable, easy to move to rhythm. And if you're in the middle of a field drinking 6 pints of cider, happy days. You know, like,
but you've sort of brought that. You've definitely brought that into like my musical like knowledge, the way I listen to stuff now, because I listen to more like Willie Nelson and things like that. But I can go to your shows and I enjoy your original music, like the album and the EP and stuff that you've put out. But when you throw in the classic covers and stuff in there, people can watch one of your shows and realize they actually know a hell of a lot more songs than they think that they know from, I don't know, just hearing a song in a film in the background, because it's got that beat in it and it fits perfectly with it. You throw it in there and I mean, yeah, you're right. When someone says they don't like country music, which I'll be honest with you, I was one of those people until I went to one of your shows and I was like, I fucking love country music now.
Yeah.
It's great.
And but people do that. What people need to realize is it's not all Jolene and Folsom Prison. You know, there's a lot of really cool songs, and the stories, and like I think people relate country music to what is currently going on in country music. You know, you got this terrible Nashville pop thing going on, but you pop on any tune that is filled with heartbreak and whiskey from back in the day, everybody's gonna love it. They're gonna love it. You know, like.
Yeah, man.
Like I said, I think it's a thing that people need to recognize, and by being the band that is playing all night, people might show up going, "Oh, there's live music," thinking, "Ah, this isn't my cup of tea." 2-3 songs in, they're like, "I get it."
And 2-3 pints in, they're definitely in it.
I've done that. I've done that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, oh, I'm not really sure, and then you have a couple of beers, and you're like, oh my god, this is the best night of my life.
Yeah. Next thing you're like, the bottle let me down.
Like earlier on, you alluded to when you perform with other musicians, you want to see people with like in the audience with a smile on their face. But when it came to that album launch, which I know I keep going back to it again, like I had such a fucking great time.
It's a great night.
You did that for the other musicians that were with you as well. Like you picked musicians who have that same mentality. Like I'd love it if you could give a shout out to the people who actually played with you, because I mean I think you had about 24 people up there at some point.
Oh Jesus! Yeah. So basically, what I wanted to try and recreate was the sound of the album that like I had in my mind, because on the album we had backup singers, we had obviously the core 4 of the band, but then we had extra electric guitar, and we had trumpet, we had oboe, we had all these extra things on there. And it was like, you know, after all these years of having to strip things down because of budget and stage size, I decided for the album release, like fuck it, it's my album, I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna have an absolute blast whilst doing it. And that's why, like, you know, mid show, there we are, my album release, and I ran off to buy more beer, and then like ran back. Oh god, I'd love to try and name everybody that was there, but I'd feel guilty if I miss anybody. But the core band, so obviously myself, David Grubb on fiddle, Ed Clemis on drums, Reese Morgan on bass, Sean Owens, who quite often plays with the Slim Pickens, normally ends up doing bass. He did bass that night for Reese, so Reese could do the electric guitar parts. But then there was so many guests, and yeah, it was just an incredible evening.
Yeah. Daniel Mintz has just pointed out the man that made the record happen, Mr. Andrew Sanders.
Well. And of course, Andrew Sanders. Andrew Sanders has recorded my last 2 albums. He did the full Slim Pickens album. He did my solo EP of Heartache Fade, of my like slow, sad songs. I just saw him about an hour ago.
So yeah, lovely man. We need to do a big plug for Andrew, because like Sanders. I remember when I first worked with him on, I think one of the first Turn of Preacher shows that I did, I kept calling him Andrew because I thought it was rude to call him by his surname because I didn't know him. And he was like, stop calling me Andrew. Not even my mum calls me Andrew. So like big up to Sanders, like at Kings Road Studio for loads, helping me and Ethan as well, and a lot of shows that he's done, especially for the record as well, which is fantastic. I was just thinking where my copy is, but I think I've got it. I think I have it in my hi-fi here, but it's switched off. But that was a great night, actually. You had it filmed as well? There's lots of stuff sort of knocking around.
So there's a really good video of like kind of a montage of everything. We just went for it. We just went balls to the wall. Because it was that thing where like a lot of people showed up that knew us, but there's actually a surprising amount of people that showed up that didn't know us, that had just heard it was a cool country bluegrass show. 1, it wasn't bluegrass. 2, it wasn't even really country.
It was a punk show. It was like, I know you have some of your slower songs. It was a punk show at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, we just absolutely went for it, and I danced, I sweated my ass off.
You drank a lot.
I drank a lot. I ran. Actually, you know what? It's funny. I ran to the bar during a song, and people were like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" Like, the singer's running away. I ran to the bar. I went to buy 4 cans for the band because I thought it'd be funny. Run back with 4 cans. After the show, they told me my card was declined.
Oh no!
So, rock and roll, baby.
That's literally like the musician thing. So I'm broke whilst playing. Like, come to me afterwards when we get paid, and I'll be able to pay off my 4-can tab.
But it was just so funny because I was like, I tapped my card and ran because it was an instrumental break. I knew how much time I had because there was
you tapping your foot the whole way, counting the beats.
there was a couple songs on the album where I played on the album, but when we did the album release, we went like I didn't play anything because that way I could just sing and be the performer, which was very weird for me to not have an instrument in front of me. So that's why I ran away and didn't have any money.
You stand there awkward with your hands in your pockets, like
yeah.
We should have crowd surfed. We should have grabbed you and crowd surfed you to the bar. That would have been great on film.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking, winding it back a little bit. I know we just talked about your album launching in club, which wasn't too long ago now. I feel like, what was it that you said you were touring all over Europe? What was it specifically which made you choose Wales then, or come to Wales originally? Was it Focus Wales that made you move here? Do you think? Or
I'll absolutely say Focus Wales is a big deciding factor. But my partner Aiden also came here for her PGCE. So we were living together in Toronto. She finished her master's, and she was trying to decide on places to go to do her teaching degree. The university she was at had a few kind of like options where it was like she could come and do it in 1 year, whereas if she stayed back home, it would have been 2 years. So we were looking kind of all around Europe and the UK. But we decided on the UK, and she applied to Glasgow and she applied to Cardiff Met.
Nice.
And she got accepted to both. And I was like, so to anybody listening, my family is Scottish. My family is from Glasgow. My mum was born in Glasgow, and I was like, I don't want to go to Glasgow. I love Glasgow. I've been there loads. I've visited there. I've gigged there, but I wanted to go somewhere different. So we settled. Well, she accepted the offer to Cardiff, and for all I had been to Wales maybe 4 times before moving here, I had never actually been to Cardiff. So I moved here sight unseen, no friends, no family. But to me, it was the most accessible. Like I can go bounce around and go tour in Europe. So the first 3 or 4 months we lived here, most of that 3 or 4 months I was touring. I would come home for a couple of weeks. I go to Europe mainland Europe for 2-3 weeks, come back, and then I actually got hired for a theater production in Toronto. So then I flew back to Toronto, did a theater production for like I think 5-6 weeks, and then flew back, and then we decided to stay. Nice. Yeah, well, it was just one of those. It was like it's all gig work. Everything I do is gig work, so it's just like you constantly have to have that momentum.
Yeah,
I suppose it is a lot more accessible than if you were in Toronto, wanted to go and play in Paris. Like, so you can get to Paris in less than a day from here. But I guess it's
well, that's just it. Like so I drive to gig in Belgium now, and it's just like to me that's such a foreign concept. But it's like really, if you time it right, you can do it in 7 hours.
Yeah,
I mean. Being from Canada, 7 hours, that's fucking nothing.
Isn't that just like normal, just going to the shops and back, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I always like to show people to get from where I grew up in Ontario to get to the next province west is a 25-hour drive. So
I can't even fathom that. Like,
that's gross.
So that's So for me to be drinking lovely Belgian beer in 7 hours, and I got to be on a boat in the middle of that, or the channel, it's like, yeah, cool. This is great.
I feel like I should go and get my BC Lions jersey on just to piss you off a little bit, because I know that they're your home team rivals.
I don't care about sports. That's why I do music.
Fair enough. Fair enough. When it comes to you talk about Canada, obviously you play a hell of a lot of shows there, but there was a lot of festivals that are sort of akin to what happens in the UK, like Focus Wales. Obviously there's South by Southwest in Austin, which you've done, which I'm going to bring back up, but the Canada side, so North by Northeast festival.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with that? Like, because you've done it. Have you done it once or twice? Yeah.
God, North by Northeast. I think I did. I definitely did once or twice solo. But thing is, my mentality with all these festivals was always like, do as much as you can with them.
Yeah.
So I definitely did North by Northeast solo, but I also did it with 2 or 3 bands I was in.
Yeah.
Because as I say, in Toronto I was just a whore. Like, if you want
a musical whore.
If you wanted
your services,
if you wanted Banjo at your show and you could buy me a few beers, I mean,
you were there.
23 and I was in, like, you know. So I definitely did. There's Canadian Music Week, there's Indie Week, and there's North by Northeast, are like kind of the 3 big like industry ones that I would say are most similar to Focus Wales. And I definitely did all of those, and I definitely did all of those a number of times, either solo or with bands. I never did any of those with my own backing band though. That I was always opposed to that till I moved here, because I was always trying to sell myself as a solo act, and then I realized I was stupid.
No, especially you don't have to share the funds with people if you're as a solo act.
Well, that was it. Yeah,
there is that, I suppose.
I was just cheap.
So when it comes to South by Southwest, because obviously that's a big achievement for I mean, there are so many acts, no matter what musical genre they are in the UK, that would bite your arm off for a chance to do South by Southwest. And I think, didn't Andy from Focus Wales help you a bit with that? Like, I don't want to obviously include that, but yeah.
No, absolutely he did. I mean, first let me say, doing South by Southwest was an absolute dream. I couldn't believe that we did it. I couldn't believe that I did it from here. And it was just like, it was an experience of just like the whole time, like, pinch me, I can't believe this is a thing. Because for all, like, maybe we're talking about, like, I've done a lot, but like I never feel like I've earned any of these things I've done, you know. So like, there we did 5 shows in 5 days in Austin, and I'm just like, well, what's going on? But yeah, so Andy definitely helped. But I think because with South by Southwest, they want to book bands that are doing things and artists that are working and clearly are doing all the legwork, because as we all know, it's not just getting on stage and dancing around. As much as I love that, the amount of boring ass time I spend on a computer.
Of the time you spend on a computer, don't you?
Yeah, and I think Andy was aware how much I was doing for that, for myself and for the Slim Pickens. And he really helped me kind of like sort out the application process. He put in a good word for us. And really that's kind of what it comes down to, is having that network, because you figure that the thousands and thousands of bands that apply for South by Southwest, and I had applied, I think it was the 5th time I had applied for South by Southwest. It didn't just happen magically. I thought I deserved it 5 years prior. So to have someone kind of in our corner to be like, no, these guys are doing it, you know. Because by that point we had played loads of big festivals. We had been doing festivals in Norway, Belgium, Netherlands. Like we were doing a lot. So to get on a plane and go there and show what we do, and to me it was kind of interesting to play and have an American audience say, "You guys are killing it." When I'm playing
that part of America as well. Like with the style of music that you're playing, if you can get Texas on your side, like, well, that's you're doing okay when it comes to country music.
Big place.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's bigger than Wales, isn't it? It's much bigger than Wales.
Is it bigger than Wales? Yeah, fuck it up. But
sorry, I don't know the map. That's all.
To have people there respect what we were doing, when to me what I'm doing is kind of in honor of, you know, American music. I play Americana at the end of the day. So no, we left there on a very big high. It was great.
Yeah, it looked wild. You guys did a little. Did Focus Wales sort of like follow you out there with a camera crew and stuff, and you did a little promo?
Yeah, I remember. I don't know how many. There must have been half a dozen bands that Focus Wales represented there.
Didn't you watch the Wales rugby game with the guys from Boyazuga and people in a bar in Texas, which is quite a strange concept for a lot of people.
Don't even like that game. So we were flying back that day. Most of the bands, so we got there a day before the festival, because my thought process was get there a day early, get your jet lag out, see the city, and if you need to sleep, you need to sleep. But lots of bands were staying an extra day, but flights were really expensive to come back a day later, so I cheaped out. I was like, no, we're leaving a day early. So we watched that game, but because of the time difference, the game was really early, and then we were flying back. And I was telling the boys, it's like, oh, you gotta try a Bloody Mary, Well, apparently in Austin they make Bloody Marys with tequila. So gross. we were drinking basically tomato juice and tequila.
That sounds breakfast.
Tomato juice, tequila, and Guinness, and then we went to the airport.
So isn't there's a fantastic photo? Obviously, I'll try and put it in the comments at some point. There's about 20 people on their Wales jerseys, and then Dave Grubb is there in his Scotland jersey. The one Scottish man. Didn't you find the only Wales pub in all of Austin or something like that?
It was really funny because there was like loads of people there supporting Wales, but then I didn't have a top on. Like I was just wearing a normal t-shirt.
It's like
But so I was the odd Canadian out. But it ended up being on like the BBC and everything. But we were hungover and drinking, so
nice. Just keep going, it's fine.
Not my finest photo. Like
and obviously, like going back to the very first question I asked you, which is like, why did you pick the banjo? Like we should bring that on to like you've got a couple of endorsements and stuff when it comes to it, the way you more than well earned those as well. Like do you have that? I was going to say, do you have the black banjo near you that maybe you could like show us?
The black banjo. It is. Hold on. I think it's in this case right here. Sorry,
so I want you to talk about your custom one as well when you come back, because I think that's quite a big thing for you right now, isn't it?
I think it's in this one. Hold on.
I'm not going to ask you to play it, by the way, because that's for after this. That's someone else can tune in there. This is the music industry, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, there you go.
There we go.
We had a note. We got a note.
Look at that.
So talk us through that, because I remember you went mad for that. I remember you telling me about it. You basically went, I just want the coolest banjo I can basically get.
Yeah. So I guess like to give a little bit of history, I moved here and then went back to the States to play in Kansas for Folk Alliance International. It's a big conference, lots of like hotel room showcases and this and that. I had a manager at the time that really sorted me out. And I met Jamie Deering of Deering Banjos, who I believe is now the CEO. But it's an amazing, but it's an amazing family run banjo company, and I'm pretty positive they're the biggest manufacturers of banjos.
That's cool.
In America.
Nice.
So my manager introduced me, and she came to see me play, and literally, like, I don't know if everybody out here has been to a showcase festival in a hotel, but like you literally go into a hotel room, there's the bed, there's some dude playing music, some band, some girl, some whatever, like there's just like, it's the weirdest thing. And then like quite often the rooms are sponsored, so like I don't know, maybe the guy from Jack Daniels is giving you drinks, Nice. But it's the weirdest fucking thing. But it's it
sounds quite sketchy when you describe it the way you just described it.
Yeah, but literally
like in a motel on the side of the I-20, like.
But literally every hotel room is a band or an act playing, and you're just bouncing around, and you've got these showcases. And like I was very fortunate because I was playing the Canadian stages, I was playing the Ontario stages, but I also got to play the Welsh and British folk stages. So I was really accepted, which was really nice. But so then I went for a coffee the next morning with Jamie, and she basically gave me a Deering catalog and said, like, we'd like you to be one of our artists, pick a banjo. So for a few years,
How fast did your jaw hit the floor then, by the way?
Well, when I saw the prices of the banjos, very quickly. But because bear in mind, I had spent all my money on a flight there. But no, they absolutely sorted me out, and they gave me a Deering Eagle 2, which is a stunning banjo. But then as time went on, I wanted something a little more mellow, something a bit more warm. But I was getting sick and tired of being a tenor banjo player, going to country and bluegrass festivals, and people telling me I was playing the wrong instrument. Because to the viewers out there that don't know, bluegrass is on a 5-string banjo, which I also play, but for the slim pickings, I prefer to play the 4-string banjo. So I decided, well, if I'm gonna get like knocked down a peg for playing the wrong instrument, I'm gonna get an instrument that also looks like it's wrong. So I got this custom.
You got the most punk rock one you could possibly find.
Custom fuck off banjo made. So it's kind of hard to see, but so this is based on a Deering Boston model. So it's mahogany wood, matte black stained. These are custom black tuners with the black pegs. They basically did everything black they could. All the metal is black nickel, but then
Stunning. It is stunning.
The inlays, which you can't even see, they're black perloid. The name is black perloid.
I feel like you could be in some like Norwegian blackmail banjo band.
Yeah.
But I just got to a point, like even like the bridge is done in black, and actually banjos quite often have a bit of felt here to stop any vibrations from the neck to the body. They even stained that black. Like it's all black, and they did all matte for me, just like I asked. And it was 100% custom. I've started to wear it because this was black, but I actually wore away the black from countless gigs. But and it's got a Cavanjo pickup in it. But yeah, it's the only one. So I was just like, well, after years and years of people telling me I was doing it wrong, I was like, well, I'm just gonna do it wrong. So
yeah, do it properly wrong.
Yeah, so I got this made, and I absolutely love it. So normally what I do is I play this for the bulk of my sets, and then if I'm doing a bigger show, I'll have this, and then I still have the Eagle, and I have that tuned differently, so I'll switch between the two. But this is usually like tuned quite low in minor and dark, obviously.
For those heavy metal bluegrass tunes.
That's it.
Yeah. But so that's my custom one of a kind Deering banjo that I've got, and I've actually got them. They're making me another banjo right now, but it's based on someone else's specs, and hopefully I'll see that in a month or two.
We'll have to get you back on just to show us that. We'll do a 15-minute talk about your banjo and get back on from there.
We just won't talk about what that one's costing me.
No. I don't want it. We don't want any tears during these. This is quite nice, wholesome Friday night chats.
You spoke a little bit when you were showing us the banjo then that, sometimes people at the festivals would give you a bit of stick for playing it wrong. Is that something, would you say then you sort of like, you play it your own way, sort of developed your own style, or would you go that far, do you think? Or
well, I think so, yes. So like I think
cool,
the big thing is like bluegrass banjo, that hard driving fast sound is 5-string. But the first banjo I got wasn't 5-string. So when I started writing music, it was on the 4-string banjo. But this is going because I'm old, I guess. I would go back and I would listen to bluegrass albums and just try to recreate it on the 4-string, not realizing that every single one of those albums I was listening to was on a 5-string banjo.
right.
So then, like, totally naive, I would show up to these events and be like surprised that people gave a shit. Like the people are like, "Whoa, you have a tenor banjo," and it's like, well, why? Why does that matter? Like, but then, through like time passing in my life, I'm really, really interested in the history of the instrument. I think I owe it to the instrument to have a good knowledge of why there's 4-string, why there's 5-string, why, you know, it's in this genre and not in this genre. So eventually from that, I started learning more claw hammer and more scrunch style, more melodic style. But in the early days, and what I still feel best doing on stage is throwing around a 4-string banjo, you know? So, but yeah, I was just getting really sick.
Isn't it
like,
less strings, less things to worry about? I mean, that makes sense.
No,
to me,
you just, you know, it's more.
I play guitar, so 6 is too many for me. I'm just like, I can just about get by with them.
It's more pain on the forearm. It's more triplets, but yeah. So I just kind of got like sick of people telling me I was doing what I loved wrong. So I just had my own.
You're the most punk rock banjo player I think there might be out there. If there's anyone that's more punk rock banjo, someone stick in the comments and we'll do like a live banjo off on there. But obviously, back earlier on in the chat, you were talking about doing your own shows and things where you booked your own sort of thing. But you moved into, it's probably must have been a couple of years back now, but you moved into booking shows of people who do the same sort of music as you for other people as well. So how did you? That, I guess that came by with you sort of in a way having to do it yourself for yourself and realizing I can do this for other people and I can get good people, the good contacts that you've got in Europe and in Canada and in the UK and stuff. But where's that taken you and who have you worked with along with that?
I mean, you're pretty well bang on. Like what I was getting was loads of people messaging me saying like, who booked that tour? Like, how did you do that tour? So I started saying to people like, well, I'll just book you this tour. And I started Broken Banjo Bookings as a boutique Americana, Canadiana booking service. And what I didn't want to be is people's babysitters. I didn't want to be people's tour managers. What I wanted to be was people's connection to venues that wanted Americana. Yeah. So I started booking a number of amazing acts, and I would send them to Europe. They do 20 shows. They go back to Canada. They made money. I made a little bit of money because they paid me. The venues were happy. Everybody was happy. So some of the acts I booked were Murder, and I feel like a lot of these names are going to mean a lot to many listeners here. But in the folk kind of Americana alt country world, Murder, I love those guys. You know, they were a band I wanted to book. They were friends, but now they've become really good friends. Sarah Jane Scouten, great musician. She now lives in Scotland, but she's a Canadian act that I booked. And acts through that kind of gained me a bit of popularity, and I started booking some more acts for Muddy Roots. Muddy Roots is an American festival label that has a festival in Belgium as well. So what would happen is I would work for the European festival, and the bands would get booked to the festival, and I would book them a tour around it to ensure they made enough money.
Yeah.
And then
you were saying it's more accessible for them to go and get shows in other places.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, because when you contact, you know, a small venue on the outskirts of a town in name any European city, they're just really stoked that you want to play there. Yeah. And then everybody around is really stoked that people are coming to play.
Yeah, so, I've had friends who play really obscure, like really heavy mathcore bands that they can go and play in a cafe or a bar or somewhere, and they'll get paid it really well, and people are excited to go and see it. Rather than, let's take Germany for example, you could be 50 miles outside of Munich and there's nothing to do there, but you can get a show there because people will be able to go.
So that was my business model for that. Was I'm not going to book you in Berlin, I'm not going to book you in Amsterdam, but I'm going to book you a tour, and it'll be fun as shit. And you'll make money.
Again, there's another tag there. I'll book you a tour and it'll be fun as shit.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? And it's just like, and it went really well for a while, but then I had a bunch of personal stuff go on, and it's a full-time job times 2. Yeah. Because what's happening is you're speaking to bands in America, you're speaking to agencies or venues in Europe. So you've got this massive time difference. You're in the middle of all that. People expect answers right away. Bands, I'm not gonna poorly talk about any bands, but bands started to expect the world. They thought with their 700 Facebook likes, they could come to Europe and become millionaires. Obviously, that's an exaggeration, but I really started to get frustrated with the amount of people that thought they didn't have to put the legwork in themselves.
Right.
So that started to, again, like for personal reasons, whatever, that like kind of swindled down to, I'm only going to work with bands that I truly want. It's no longer about the income. It's just about, if I think a band should tour in Europe and they can make money, as long as my time is covered, I will do that for a band.
That's
nice,
sort of another
that's
side
really
to the
nice.
passion side to it, isn't it? Because obviously the banjo and your music and everything is a passion. That's a passion. I mean, I know it works the same for me and Ethan. Like I've sort of in a few years moved away from wanting to be a performer and stuff, and the passion is putting on gigs for other bands and giving them the experience of that. Albeit I know it's not in Europe and we're not booking 10 shows in a row for people, but it builds up to being that. So it's good that like.
But and that's just it, because I was trying to make it my job, and I realized I don't want to make it my job. I don't want to work with people I don't want to work with. I'd much rather have it as, I've helped this band and I'm really glad I helped this band. I spent a lot of time doing it. They paid me for the time I did it, but like, I didn't pay all my bills with it. It's like, it just, I started taking on bands for the sake of taking on bands. And then I remembered, it's my name's on the line. Like if a band is terrible to a venue, they might put on the best show ever, but like, they could be the biggest assholes. When I go to play that place, because I had to remember, I'm a musician.
So
when
your
I go to play,
attached to it, I suppose.
Yeah, when I go to play that place, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're the one that sent us those fucking idiots," like.
Yeah.
So I had to.
I
had to reassess what I was doing, and I'm glad I did, because it gave me more time to focus on my own music, which I prefer to do anyways.
Yeah, I suppose you'll still always have that as well, because I mean, you had to book it yourself in the first place to then go back to it. So if you ever do find a band that that you can help, you just don't have to switch it off and on. It's just always there. So that's a really good sort of skill to have. Absolutely,
and like I got really good with knowing the map of Europe. But just as is happening here and as is happening everywhere, if you're not constantly on top of it, you're contacting venues that have closed or under new management, and people don't realize it's not magic. You don't get to go on tour for nothing. So.
It's tough.
Well, you also do like lessons and stuff as well from basically where you're sat right there, effectively.
This is actually my teaching spot. So I've actually taught for a very long time. I actually started teaching while I was still taking lessons. The music school I taught at when I first started was a school I was taking lessons at, and they said I could have a discount on my lessons if I taught the younger kids. So
pass it down. If you learn, you then pass down.
It's like a pyramid scheme, isn't it?
Yeah. You just have to go on a timeshare as well.
But my parents loved it, because basically I was getting free lessons at 17.
Nice.
So I taught at 17. Then I moved to Toronto. I taught private lessons at a private school, and then I took a little bit of time off teaching to try and do this booking thing. But then I realized I love talking about my instruments. I love talking about the right and wrong way to do things on the instruments. And I spent a lot of time reading about these instruments. So I'm happy to share that knowledge. So I've it's a bit lesser right now because of everybody being on a lockdown, but there's not a ton of banjo teachers around. So I was doing okay. I had quite a few students, and I just teach. This is my music room, and they come and they mostly do banjo lessons. I also teach guitar, but mostly people want to come learn banjo. So
you make the banjo cool at the end of the day, like I said. It turns
into a
punk rock instrument, like.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just one of those. It's just the type of instrument that, like, when people want to learn, they go on YouTube, which is fine because that's also how I started learning, kind of. And then they realize very quickly that the YouTube lessons aren't catered to them. So they're like, oh, when they have questions, there's no answers, you know.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of people that have been learning for 6 months, a year, whatever, by themselves, and then they come to me, and then we kind of fix all those bad habits, and then we end up just working together to make them a better banjo player.
I suppose you can sort of pass on your passion that you have for it to them as well, especially when I suppose it's no fun having someone turn up and go, this is how you play an E chord, this is how you play an A chord. When you've got someone who's interested in the instrument itself, and like you said, you know the history and you understand the music and everything behind it, you can pass that on to them and get them more interested when they go home, listen to more music, opening their eyes to it, like and ears, I suppose.
Absolutely, and like I cater every lesson to that student. I mean, the banjo, I mean, we could have a whole other chat about the history of the banjo, but it's not exactly a written tradition. So I try my best to avoid any written material. Obviously, like I'll jot down what we did for that lesson. I'll tab out what we did. But at the end of the day, this is how you play this song. In one of the 1,000 ways you could play this song. But here's the technique that's used, and I want to see that technique being used in other songs.
Progressed onto other stuff.
Yeah. Nice. And when you've learned that lick, that Earl Scruggs lick that we learned today, you realize it's in 100 other songs. You know what I mean?
You can throw it in whenever you're on a jam session.
But that's it. That's literally the banjo. It's these licks and tricks. We follow the melody and we have these fills. And it's how do we accomplish those things and make our own parts? Because you buy any banjo book and it tells you who wrote that part or who that part is based on. It's not note for note, this is what this song is supposed to be, because there's a long tradition of those songs. It's a fiddle tune that's been carried across an ocean,
Yeah.
So
I think we'll sort of wrap it up a bit there. Just before you go, obviously, you're sort of, after you finish the next 10 cans of Amstel that you've got there, you're doing a live stream after this, aren't you, as well? So we
fucking hell, I forgot about that.
Yeah. Give us a bit of a sort of what's happening with that, who's it with and stuff, and then we'll obviously make sure we try and get it in the comments and stuff, so people who have been watching this will be able to sort of jump in as well. So about 20 to 10, I think you're playing there or thereabouts.
Yeah, so I'm on 22, and Llangollen Fringe Festival. I've played a couple times. I've done it as a solo act. I opened for the Felice Brothers. That was huge. Lovely band. Drank a bunch of wine with them afterwards. Lovely dudes. Then I did it again as a bit of a honky tonk cover band, because if you've not been there, it's a beautiful little town, and they have a old vintage train that comes through. So they incorporate that as part of the Fringe Festival. So we played like on the platform, but yeah. So I'm going to be finishing it off for them this evening at 9:40. I'm going to play a bunch of songs off of my latest EP. Maybe a couple of country covers. To be honest, I probably should have decided this by now.
That's what I thought. I guess you may not have, so I thought we'll end it a little bit early.
But yeah, I think I'm just gonna do like a pretty chill guitar set. Llangollen Fringe Festival is the Facebook page. If you pop on that, you can join in. But you can probably go back and see all the other artists. A good friend of mine, Andy Hickey, asked me to play. He quite often, I think every Focus Wales, he hosts the Royal Oak show that I've been doing, so I've got to know him really well for that. So it's just I haven't done a lot of live streams overall this lockdown, but this is when I felt you
got two sort of things in one evening, so that's not
that's just it.
You only have to remember one day then, so that's okay.
So I just want to put that on your Darren Eedens Facebook page then, for anyone listening. That'll be going. You'll sort of share about, or they can hit up the Llangollen festivals.
If they go on, honestly, if they pop on my Facebook page, I've already shared the link to the Llangollen Fringe. I'm not sure if my personal Facebook page will show the event, if that makes sense.
We'll share it in the comments on here as well, and we'll
okay, cool.
Jump onto it as well. Yeah, I just want to say one last thing. Because earlier on, you said some of that sort of. I've written it down. You said that you felt like you hadn't earned a lot of the stuff that you've done, and I just want to say, I from what you said, you definitely have, and you've worked incredibly hard. So don't
100%.
Don't ever think that. Like I know.
So
how
I like
feels,
you, man.
but yeah, seriously, like, thanks so much for
Thank you, man.
for joining us, Darren. Like it really means a lot. Obviously, with your time. And,
I appreciate it, man.
We'll be tuning in as well in about half an hour's time. I mean, I've run out of beer, which is the main reason why I'm deciding to have this chat. But yeah, thanks so much, Darren.
I appreciate you guys,
and it was really good.
Everything you guys do for the scene is, we all appreciate it. I love it.
Thanks a lot, Darren.
Thank
you, Facebook.
This has been a good Friday evening, hasn't it?
This has been a good Friday evening as well. Even though Darren's background has been giving me quite the headache as I've been going through, but
it's sound dampening.
It's bad for the eyes, good for the ears.
Yeah, it's good. All right, nice one. Thank you.
Lovely, boys. Cheers.
Ta-da.